welcome to this week's episode of Cloudy with a Chance of Insights, the bi-weekly podcast focusing all about Microsoft Cloud, from Azure all the way through down to Dynamics and M365. Although we don't touch on Dynamics that often, but every so often, just to sort of spice it up a little bit, we do go down that rabbit hole. This week, we have got a range of topics, including some work from MIT that David will cover off. Cyrus has got some updates around Purview, Entra, GraphSpy, whatever that is, and some game that he's saying that we will all want to get on Steam. Well, I will reserve judgment on that one. I'm going to just give a quick update on a post I saw, I think it was yesterday, from Microsoft, where they're rejigging some of their certifications, and a post that I saw first thing this morning. So I haven't had a chance really to dig into it, but it's around Zero Trust, which is one of our favorite topics on this show, and AI in particular. So I'm going to kick it off a little bit with, as usual, one of my digressions on what I've been up to this week. And again, I mean, based on the audience stats that I can see, I'm not sure how many people will be going to RSA, probably none. But I am going to do another shout out to just call out the fact that IBM is going to be there. And we got some really interesting stuff around the Microsoft cloud sort of security ecosystem there. So if you're going, or you know somebody is going, or you just want to catch up online, please do sort of check out some of the IBM announcements and demos for that. And I'll challenge you to see if you can find the one that was vibe coded, because there is at least one demo on there that was entirely vibe coded, and I think you all probably know which one who may have been responsible for that instance. But I will be able to talk about that more after RSA, so hopefully we can have a quick session around sort of Microsoft Graph and Microsoft Lake post RSA. Now, we are going to wrap up with what I think is an interesting discussion about vibe coding and the differences. So we'll cover that off right at the end, because myself, David, and Cyrus have done, I think, similar things, and we've come up with some interesting conclusions. But anyway, I will kick off, and the first thing I'm going to cover off is the fact that Microsoft has announced the creation of some new certifications and deprecation of some existing ones. So I think we've talked about the AB certs in a prior pod. So those are more business focused, although there is a technical one, which I think is the AB. I'm going to get the number wrong, but it's the AB 100, I think, is the more technical one. But otherwise, they're more sort of business orientated certifications. But what we've got coming up apparently is a whole heap of new certs, or at least ones that have been slightly tweaked around. So I'm basically reading off the chart actually at the moment. So that runs from AI 300, which is the Machine Learning Operations Engineer Associate, which is Data 1. So there's an AI 103, which is Azure AI App Agent Developer Associate, all the way through to June, where there's apparently a Windows Server Hybrid Administrator, which is AZ 802. Now, those are the new certifications in the timeline. And there are some deprecated or retiring certifications, including DP100, which is the Data Scientist Associate. AI 900 apparently is been retired in April 2026. So that changes my study plan for for the next couple of months. AI 102, again, so a lot of the AI ones are being deprecated and being replaced by some of these ones that are on the pipeline. Now, what I think that means is that Microsoft are sort of doubling down again on the AI story, which makes perfect sense, because that is where a lot of the focus from them is coming. And I think we're seeing a lot of interest from practitioners that want to go and sort of study and focus in on those areas. So anyway, I'll put the link to that article in the show notes. Please do have a quick look at that, because obviously that does change what some people may have been planning to do for their sort of certs journey later on in this year. And I'll go quickly on to the other post that literally came into my inbox about half an hour ago. So I haven't really had the chance to digest it properly. But it is the update that Microsoft are inserting AI into their Zero Trust framework. which again makes perfect sense, because with Agent 365, you are now treating AI agents as a person, as an identity. So in theory, you should be able to apply the same controls and processes around that. So standard, from what I can see, sort of standard sort of terminology and sort of methodology here, assume breach, least privilege, etc., trust but verify. It'll be very interesting to see how that rolls out over the next, month or so. It's not something that we tend to use that much, is the zero trust framework and assessment. But I'm sure Cyrus has probably got some views around that. But it's definitely something that I think is worth having a quick look at. And again, notes will be added. Link will be added to the show notes later on. All right, those were my two very, very quick updates. And I will now, I think, pass across to Cyrus, who will probably continue that security theme before we delve into the MIT piece that David has picked up on, and some updates around sort of Azure agents. Cyrus, over to you.
Yeah, and about the certification change, there's also the MS 900 that I used to like. I didn't pass it, but I always encourage people who start with Microsoft to start with this one, because you see all the Office 365 evolution to Microsoft. And now they retired that one instead of improving it to the AB 900, which is exactly what you said, Richard, about the completely shift from Microsoft to going full on AI. And I have my vision on that, but I see everyone requiring like AI knowledge now, so it's not a debate anymore. And I didn't know about the news you shared with the AI assessment on the Microsoft. I think it's on Meister, but it's the one that Meryl Fernando talks often. They're doing a very good job, so I'm going to check that. My news are going to be short snippets. I think it's a better format because when I dive too much and people just hear what we're discussing, they can be lost. And I listened to myself 2 weeks ago. I was like, okay, even myself, I'm lost with my own thoughts. So I'm going to be short. So there will be Purview, Entra, and Intune as usual. I'm trying this format. So starting late March 2026, there's the Purview DLP policies already block Copilot from processing sensitive labeled like Word, Excel, PowerPoint files. And now it will apply across all storage location. So that's including like a file stored locally on device 2. And that sounds small, but it's actually a big governance step. And it was required. And now late March, this is starting. No extra step for admin. It's going to be done automatically. So if you've done the classification work in your company, it's good. Another cross-product change is between Defender and Purview on March 23rd, which is actually when the episode will be released. Microsoft retires endpoint sensitive data alerting on Defender portal. And after that, the place for endpoint DLP alerting, enforcement, and investigation is Microsoft Purview DLP. I encourage you to check. There's a lot of change, and that's the way to check now. And Purview is not the main control plane, not Defender anymore. Which also is a debate where your team is going to check alerting. Is it Defender? Is it Purview? It makes sense. I was against that, but it makes sense. On the Entra level, the condition access enforcement change. There's a change that started the 27th March with rollouts that will continue until June. So it's a small phase approach. It's going to take 2 months. So this one affects tenants that have conditional access policies targeting all resources. And we know that when people start with conditional access, doesn't matter if it's Microsoft or anything else, we and myself included when I started to learn that, to do all with exceptions. So when you have one or more resource exclusion, after this change, some signings that previously escaped enforcement cannot trigger conditional access challenge, including MFA or device compliance checks. So all the exceptions now are going to be real exceptions. So they will be stopped being real exceptions. And another one, And I thought of you, David. I don't know why. I mean, I know why. I'm going to tell. From March 21st, so put that in your agenda, Entra will fully block service principal-less authentication. So any app still depending on the old behavior can fail after that date. It's one of those hidden identity cleanup tasks that nobody wants to do, but everyone will feel it. So I know that, David, because you involve into all the like critical, time sensitive, like sometimes firefighting. From March 21st onward, if you hear any clients saying, "Oh, nothing works, we don't know why," think of those service principal-less authentication. There's still a lot in those type of clients we have. Now, Intune and Defender, it's going to be quick. My notes. Short one. So Defender for Android is ending the support for personal profiles on unrolled device. I talked about that, I think, few episodes back. And now the rollout started mid-March and it will be completed by late March. So it's very short. And now the focus is to protect corporate work profile. So it's a different policies. You have to check that instead of taking the whole device, the personal device, and securing it, you only work with the work profile, which means a lot of old Android devices are not compatible. So there will be no enrollment possible. So if you have clients who need kind of this kind of BYOD policies, a lot of old Android device is what I try to say will not be compatible anymore. And the last one that affected me on my own lab, and I know it will affect a lot of clients, is from this month, from actually this week. It was postponed from October, I think, last year, 2025. We had an old required approved client app that exists since like, I think, 12 years in Intune. And when you do required approved app, for example, you say on your phone, you can only use Outlook for business and you have to download it from the Play Store or from the App Store. Now this is finished. This kind of approved client app is retired. And there's a complete new one called Require Application Protection Policy. So you go into the application protection. It's not in the same area in the portal. It's completely different. And the documentation is very well done from Microsoft. I will share the link. And this one is critical because you have to completely recreate the policies and think differently on how do you enforce protection, how to use Word, and how to make sure that OneDrive can be used or not. And so that's it for the Microsoft one. Should I go directly now to the two authors, or you wanted to cross to do David first, or I can do it quickly.
No, you continue, Cyrus, and don't ask for my permission. Just go and do whatever you feel like. This is a free format. As listeners and watchers will know, this is almost a free format. Anything goes. 45 minutes to an hour session. So you do whatever you feel like you want to do, Cyrus. Lovely.
No, sorry. Sometimes I speak fast and I know sometimes you want to interact. So feel free to interrupt. This one, Richard, is mainly for you. I don't know if you heard about this one. There's plenty of tools anyway, but there's a guy I follow and I just love the guy. It's called John Hammond, and now he's working more with Microsoft. And he used to be a hacker. He worked he used to work for the government of the US, and I think in the military level too. He used to teach cybersecurity army, and he mentioned a tool last week, and I just went into rabbit hole. I'm not going rabbit hole now. I've written my text to not go dive deep, but so it's called GraphSpy, and it's built on top of like a Microsoft Graph. So in simple words, if an attacker gets access after an Entra IT breach, GraphSpy shows how much damage can happen through identity and tokens. And it's not only through malware on device, it can store access and refresh tokens, query Microsoft 365 data through Graph, as I said, search across file and mail, and inspect Entra relationship like user, groups, device, app roles, permission. But what makes it nasty is the post-breach angles. It's all about post-breach, what you can do practically with few clicks and even with a graph. And the project describes features such as adding MFA methods for persistence, creating device code sessions, which normally should be blocked, and even trying register a device and obtain stronger token material like a PRT or Windows Hello related keys. That's game over. when you have that, you can't see, and that is why identity is the new perimeter. I wanted to enforce that. I will not dive deep too much on the tool. Richard, myself, the cloud vendors, they all talk about yes, identity is new perimeter. If you play with that tool, you can see that it's actually not only the new perimeter, but that's the main angle. Because once you have access to this, that's completely game over.
Cyrus, that's actually really interesting. I'm going to have to go and have a look at that because, and again, I'm going to have to be very careful what I say here because I am under NDA for something that will be announced next week. But I think I'm safe to talk about the out-of-the-box graph capability that you can get with Sentinel Graph and Sentinel Lake at the moment. So we have developed an app that is hooking into that. So we're not using the standard Defender view. We're using a custom view of the graph primarily from an identity perspective. So we've got like the Entra sign-in logs coming in there. We've got the permissions, role sets, etc. So what we're doing for that is we're actually doing something very similar in a way, but obviously from a defensive posture, not being like a red teaming or white hats or whatever you want to call it. So we're looking at, okay, what are those correlations between identity that signed into, in this instance, it's signed into Azure. What can they do? What have they done? Where is that blast radius coming through? And I haven't yet thought about actually how could I look at that from the other way. So I've got this graph, which has got all these nodes and edges all set up based on the out-of-the-box data that is available from Sentinel Graph. In theory, I should be able to use that as like a red team. Okay, look, I've got a vulnerability here. I'm seeing something a little bit interesting here. How could I technically exploit that so that I can build my own defenses up and mitigate against that attack? So I'm going to go and have a look at that after this and see whether it's something that I can build into this. Obviously, post RSA, because I'm on a change freeze now, so I can't change anything on that that service literally just before it's going to be demoed. But that is something that will go on the backlog. And assuming that I get coverage to continue work on this, I will integrate something along those lines as well. So thank you. That was actually an interesting add-on to that service.
Now I was thinking of you because all these graph works you do, and I know it's NDA, but so that's absolutely cool. You try and please give me your feedback because I saw videos and I wanted to play with it, but I haven't played yet. And The next one.
So in theory, I can talk about this in the next pod because it will be out into the public domain at that point in time.
So stay tuned.
Yes.
The next one is for David. I kept that news for you, and I forgot to talk about it last week. Last 2 weeks, I think. I don't remember when we recorded. So I kind of like when. So I call myself a pigeon sometimes because I'm against privacy breach. I'm all about security. I use like ProtonMail, Swiss-based company for emails. I'm about paranoia. But there's a side of me that also like to be targeted with really precise advertisement. So when the ad is good, I'm like, okay, you know me better than me. Tell me more. So there was this game that came twice to my feed, and I could not stop watching it. And I checked, and this game is going to be released the 31st of March. Probably you know it, David. It's on Steam. It's called Data Center. And you are in an FPS. You are a technician or an engineer or a manager, I don't know, but you're in a data center and you can do cable management. You can change IP address. You see all these like machines that you can also manage the cooling, and you see you manage everything. And you can go under the floor. You can make sure that the water pipe works correctly. You see the data flow on the networks on the roof, and it's like. And I saw a comment and I just laughed for like a few minutes. It said, "Oh, it feels like work." I love it. I'm going to buy that game. If you love infra, that game is already, it should be already in your cart. We're not sponsored. It's not the game I have actions on, or I don't own anything. It's just like I find it really cool. I used to have a game, I forgot the name, but you could make your own PCs. It's also on Steam, so you can choose your graphic card, NVIDIA, AMD, the case, Unreal. So you can even add your own new. If you're into building PC, you can add all the new keys that are released, Leanly, etc. And I have that game I play sometimes. But this is like on steroids. You are literally in a data center and you make it sure you can even learn data center if you just heard about it. So sorry, I digressed.
Yeah, that's very cool. I have no intention of looking at it, but I've spent way too many midnights sat in data centers. I'm not going to. There is a limit to my enthusiasm, Cyrus, and I think you just found it.
Yeah, I've same for me as well. I spent too much time being on call trying to fix data center issues when they went pop. To actually worry about playing a game that does that as well.
PTSD, I don't know, but maybe it's too much trauma from me, but I can't wait to play that game.
Half the time caused by me, I must say. Interestingly, I do need to check what Gustavo's done with this, because I actually haven't clicked. I don't know whether you've seen it, Cyrus. So there's a chap that works in IBM called Gustavo, and I can't remember his surname, but he's actually a security MVP.
Yes.
I've seen a few of his posts on LinkedIn where I think he's actually created a game to help you learn cybersecurity. Yes. Now, I haven't clicked on them, so my bad. Sorry, Gustavo, if you actually ever see this. But I do think that might be an interesting way to get people skilled up. If you can make a learning experience a little bit more fun, especially if, I mean, I've talked about this on a separate blog article. I can't study the way that normal people study. I can't sit and read a book or read an article or, those sorts of things. I actually sort of have to go and crack open something and actually try and build it and mess about with it. That's how I learn, which you can't necessarily do in some instances. I mean, I can't go, for example, onto the IBM Azure instance and stand up an SAP estate, because I will be fired quite quickly when they get the bill. But that would be one way to learn that, doing, for the SAP on Azure certification as an example. So anything that helps people learn and get involved, or even just to open their eyes to see what actually is involved in some of these processes, I'm all for that. I'm not sure I'd play it, but it seems like a really good idea to me.
Gamification. No, definitely follow Gustavo, whoever listen here. He's a very good guy.
Yeah. Right. So that's some of the security pieces. I think we might be touching on that a little bit later on as well in this. But now, David, we have got from you Azure Agents, I think, or at least, and something that MIT has done.
Yeah. So three interesting things, hopefully. And the first one, as you say, is for people that might have missed it when it's been released, because I think it's been there a little while. And this is the Microsoft Agent Skills repository in GitHub. Now, if you've not looked at it, definitely worth having a gander. We were saying in as you say, the green room earlier, a lot of IDEs will lean on the Microsoft Learn MCP when doing things in Azure, trying to work out how to do things. And these skills actually bring that a bit closer to your IDE. So it gives you a set of Azure-specific agent skills. If you look at the repo at the top level, it's like a whole bunch of folders that group skills by domain. Which predominantly in this instance is kind of the Azure services or sort of common operational things, right? So it covers things like identity, networking, compute, storage, monitoring, cost management, governance, security, as we all love. And as you dive into those, each of those then becomes quite granular in terms of what they do. So it's super helpful repo, and then helps you do things, right? Helps you better diagnose things, or maybe configure private endpoints, or what everyone loves, understanding what's going on DNS resolution paths. So a lot of the agents will also have reference links, so the curated links back out to Microsoft Learn. So instead of one big Microsoft Learn MCP that kind of goes and tries to find everything, you've got actually targeted ones. So that's really helpful, because then you're more likely to get the outcome that you want when you've got the specific skills targeting the specific assets on the Microsoft site to do it, and it can pull in the detail as needed. I think they've included scripts, some PowerShell stuff, some Azure CLI stuff, some Python stuff. So they're not big, but again, it helps you, the agent in the ID, then give you sort of targeted advice, which is super helpful. So go have a look at that. I think it'd be really useful.
It is super helpful, and I think we might touch on this a little bit later on, but just in case we don't, one of the issues that I've had with Vibe Coding, and I think, David, we've talked about this internally when I did that little session for a couple of people, is that there are things that I found that GitHub Copilot, regardless of which model it uses, some models are better than others, but still there seems to be a bit of a gap here, really struggle with some elements of the sort of development workflow. And I can show a GitHub repo where I can see that, I can show you the way that all the actions basically have failed for like 2 pages in a row, because GitHub Copilot really struggles with doing GitHub action deployments into Azure web apps. And I don't know why. So that sort of extra resource, and I think I was using the Azure MCP server for that one, but it sounds like this might be a much better resource pool to point the agent at. But I did my usual fallback, is I went to M365 Copilot and said, why is GitHub Copilot struggling to do this so badly? And I wish I'd saved in fact, I do have it, because it's going to be in the history somewhere. So if I might dig it up and put it into the show notes as a screenshot or something. But it basically said, yes, GitHub Copilot is notoriously bad at doing the GitHub Actions work. These are what you need to tell it to do.
That's Reddit, isn't it? Let's face it.
So anything that helps the sort of agent, especially if you're doing this in a vibe codey autonomous sort of way, is a plus point, because I don't know whether it's just because when the models were created, things have changed, or whether the model's been constructed, or how the agent, retrieves that data. But there are some things that it's really quite bad at.
I'm going to have to go off on a tangent, actually. It was really interesting yesterday, and we'll talk about this later, what I was doing later. But I've been iterating on a particular thing. I moved to plan mode to get it to actually think about what it was going to do before it went and did it. We're in plan mode, and I've got the new do whatever you want option. Essentially, autopilot is called now in Visual Studio Code Beta. So you basically just let it go, do whatever you want. So in theory, less tokens, less premium requests. That's the word I'm looking for. Less premium requests, because it's just off doing things and it doesn't interact. So it's super. And I put it in plan mode, and you could see it going da 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 da. Oh, but wait, I'm in plan mode. I can't do anything. But I really need to help the person, but I can't do anything because I'm in plan mode. And then it comes back to me with asking, shall I use? I can see the chain of thought. Yeah. Oh, well, maybe I can use a sub agent to go away and do it, even though I'm plan mode. And it did.
What?
So I spun up a spun agent outside of context, did the thing, came back and went, done it. I'm like, hang on, you're still in plan mode. Anyway, that was really interesting.
Scary, actually.
I'm getting so much. I'm trying to think what the word is, but again, apologies for listeners. I think I might have talked about this in one of the other pods, so I'm just repeating myself here. But I managed to sort of realize why I was struggling so much with it, because what it was doing is it's obviously got these master instructions, which I think basically you just hit upon, which is move fast, do things, get results basically quickly. That in essence is what it's trying to do. Minimal input from user. So then when you try and tell it to do something differently, it clashes, and you sometimes either get weird behavior, or you just get it ignoring what you said because it wants to follow the master instructions or whatever you want to call it. And it sounds like something very similar has happened there, because it wants to go and do something. That's what it's been programmed to do. Even though you're in plan mode, it's sat there going, okay, I've got a solution. I'm going to do this, so I can meet both things at the same time. We're going to end up with a HAL 9000 mode at some point in time with some of these things. That's one for the old people.
Digression,
Yeah.
but worthwhile one. All right, so moving on. The second thing I wanted to talk about is a thing called GenCad. Now, this is it's a student project that's come out of MIT, not production, not anything. And I guess before, dare I say, you roll your eyes and go, David, not another look what AI can do example. I think it is a little bit different, and we've touched on this in the past. But if I frame it, so we know that AI can generate an output, so whether it's an image, a UI, whatever. Most of the time it looks mostly right, but essentially it's a surface, right? And AI doesn't understand what it's creating. And we touched on this in the last pod, as I said, in terms of PowerPoint, a really, really simple, obvious example of that. It just doesn't understand the composition that makes up that thing. Now, reading this paper, this MIT paper, it actually goes a level deeper. So you can take a sketch or an image and it will generate a CAD image file of that. So not just the shape, but the sequence of operations that would create it, right? So this means you've got an editable, usable thing that you can take into a real engineering workflow. So it's not like this. Typically, you see just a visual representation. It's. And I've wondered for a while why we can do this, but it treats CAD like a language, right? So each operation becomes a token, and the model learns how to generate the sequence steps. So I'm not saying it understands it contextually, like we're saying, but if it gets better at being able to wireframe and understand, hopefully, 3 dimensions through this learning, then that then becomes quite an interesting thing. I think it opens up the possibility, and we're way off, I guess, but spatially understanding what's on a page, right? And that can make for some super interesting use cases down the road. So I thought that was worth sharing.
Absolutely, because again, that comes into my other bugbear with AI is the design limitations, which I think is leading us really, really, really nicely into the last subject matter.
Let me take us there, and I guess this is one of my more introspective ones, so it's a bit of a tangent. And well, we touched on this at the beginning, right? So in a world where everyone has access to the same knowledge, where different prompts, and we'll talk about this, result in similar output. So as Richard touched on, Richard's created a website recently using, I think it was Copilot, right?
Yeah, Copilot with Sonnet 4.6.
Yeah. I built one using GitHub Spark and then moved to GitHub Copilot. But regardless, the output was pretty much identical. Richard and Cyrus, you've been building stuff as well. The 2 websites, visually they look like almost carbon copies.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, how do you differentiate? And there is so much discussion about how roles are going to change in this AI era, right? And I don't know if you follow him, Uli Homan. Have you do you follow those guys as well? So
yeah,
he was talking about that very specific topic on their podcast, Armchair Architects. Go listen to it. They're fabulous. And the focus at the moment is what the tasks are going to get automated, what skills become more or less important, all that sort of thing. But I think my observation sits a bit lower, a bit deeper than that, right? And if we're all using the same model, trained on the same data, with increasingly opinionated frameworks underneath, we can all get to, I guess, what you could call a good enough output, right? Really, really quickly. So given that, where does actual differentiation come from? We know that AI is sort of acting as a leveler, which is really good, right? It raises the floor. More people can build more. They can do it quicker. You can, but as with all things, as you raise the floor, you compress the space in the middle, and at that point, dare I say it, being competent isn't that distinctive. Whereas you had people who were good at stuff. That's not enough anymore. So if you're trying to stand out, incremental improvement in those skills really isn't enough. So I think I'm saying it'd be interesting to talk about these, right? The differentiation in three areas. The first is about how things are composed. So I'm not talking about the individual components, but how everything sort of is brought together. How you orchestrate the capabilities, how do you manage state, how do you connect into real systems, governance, data boundaries, all that stuff. And then possibly the most important is in judgment. So how deciding what to build, what not to build, right? Deciding where to place the constraints. And this is kind of what Uli goes into from the architect perspective, deciding what good looks like. So I think, in those three things, you may well still wind up with two systems that look very similar on the surface, but then could be super, super different underneath.
Yeah.
So I think, don't get me wrong, I think I don't think this means that building things becomes less important. I think it does shift where the value sits. And then, so where does that value sit? And that's what I wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna do my usual and take a slightly different meaning probably from what you're saying to go through this. But how can I say this? So I'm actually getting really worried about what an app means now. And that sounds a bit of a weird statement, but let me give a bit of context. So Wednesday morning, was it Wednesday morning? It was either Wednesday or Tuesday morning, doesn't really matter. But anyway, Wednesday morning, just for argument's sake, I wanted to do a diagram. And you guys have seen the output of this actually on the Slack that I put in there. But I wanted to do the diagram in a very specific way. So somebody recommended I go and look at this diagramming tool. I'm not going to mention the name. I think some people might guess if I flash up a screenshot of what this tool is. But anyway, and it didn't quite do what I wanted to do. And there were some things that would be useful that were hidden behind a paywall. And yes, I could get a 15-day trial, bloody, bloody, blah, whatever. But I was like, okay, right. Firstly, this doesn't quite do what I want it to do. B, I would have to go and sign up for a trial or pay for the privilege of using the software. I'm just going to do my own. And I literally just opened up, Visual Studio Code, said Copilot, look, I wanted to have a diagramming tool that does swim lanes, process flows, but the important thing is that I want the nodes and the edges to have, in effect, configurable properties. So I can use it as like some sort of weird hybrid UML, ERD type diagram. So each node on my diagram has inputs, outputs, technologies, constraints, assumptions. So it's like a big sort of, let's say it's like an ERD diagram in one sense, or an entity relationship diagram for those that don't know what the acronym means. But I spun that up in 3 hours. And it works good enough for me to use it the way that I wanted to use it. So in theory, if we can all do that, where does that leave the app economy? Where does that leave those developers that sit there doing this sort of stuff? Because I don't need to go and look at this tool now that I would have to pay for, because I've got my own version that does what I wanted to do, how I want it to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely get what you're saying. I think that it becomes interesting then, right? As an organization, I now have 200 people that want similar capability, right? 200 times 3 hours is a lot of time and effort built, time spent creating the same thing. And I think we're back into that economics conversation organizationally. And this is why organizations to date have been super strict about what can you install, what can't you install, what can you do, what can't you do, because you don't want that duplication of capability, the risk that comes with it, because, you know, maybe people aren't as diligent as you in terms of maybe some of the security that goes into those apps, and are they there's a whole there's a, as a individual doing a thing, no brainer in many ways, right? But as soon as you flip context into enterprise conversations, you need something that's secure, that's service, and all those things. And that conversation's been going on for years and years and years. And, you know, shadow IT is just going to turn into shadow apps, right? Essentially.
It is. And I don't know, David, whether you remember the whole thing about access databases.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I once did, this was actually when I was at Microsoft. I can't remember why we were going there, but it's probably to do with M365 and migration to M365. But I was talking to a client, and they'd just done an audit. And if I remember correctly, they found 10,000 access databases.
Yeah.
Because at the time, and again, depending on the age of that you are, you probably got no idea what I'm talking about. Access database was the simplest way to create a bog standard type, you know, simple application. So think of it as like the precursor to Power Platform or even
same issue. Right.
Yeah. Precisely. So you could basically get anybody to go in and create their own little app. And we had, you know, 100 different versions of like a CRM system or a contact database or whatever else it might well be. And we probably are going to end up with a similar situation. Power Platform, we you know, one of the things that we always talk about with Power Platform is governance. So that one of the things that always comes up is like a COE or some sort of governance constraint to make sure that you're not doing things. We're going to have the same thing with AI. Especially when you look at M365 Copilot, and you can create your own agents in there. And at the moment, I don't think you can turn that function off.
Well,
don't quote me on that, but I don't think you can turn it off. I think it's actually in there by default once you've got the license.
I'm just going back to what David said before. There's two things. One with the skills. I've read a lot about this, and I was a bit confused about some stance publicly people had, and I asked my friends who are experts, and I trust them, and the stance was, with skills now we don't need MCP servers, we don't need any of those. It's actually true. MCP use a lot of tokens, and it's absolutely new, and I was still learning about MCP, which are like routers, about all the things that as a capability you can do on a specific context. With skills, you completely use like 1/10, 1/100th of the amount of tokens. It's actually ridiculous the amount of savings you do, and it's native API talk on CLI. Sorry. So it's what the AI wants. So that's a big subject you mentioned, David. And there's something else. Less is more. So the example was coal. When you had like vapor train. Sorry, I don't have steam machines. Sorry. So when you had steam machines, people predicted, and you can see in the 1800s newspaper, that we will not need the coal mine, because there is now steam and you can use efficiently the train to transport things. But actually, because there was more train, you needed more coal. Same for cars. When cars used like raw petrol, when you invented like a more efficient engine, people predicted that the car will use like 80% less petrol than normal. So we will not, the petrol value will go down because you need less petrol, but no, less means more. So there's more cars. Everyone can now buy cars. And the discussion was about AI. There was, as we discussed together, less the requirement for developers. So now we saw like layoffs everywhere, Amazon, Microsoft, every company, because of this subject. Yet more people independently do more development, but they're not developers. They have access to abilities they didn't have before. But as you said, David, like we need like security, these kind of things. You need specific brain, and there will be more requirement for those developers. And the corroboration of that was why MIT, Stanford, Central Supélec in France, a lot of these guys want to be engineers on physics and different things. They end up going to do AI engineering. And the one was a student talking about going to Dassault, working on CATIA. He didn't want to do that because the salary is so high and there was more demand. And the subject was like, why? We thought that development is finished. But again, less means more in some context. It's a thought. I'm not sure if it's completely true, but what I said about coal and fuel was right. I checked. It's just, I'm sorry, I digress too much, but it's such an interesting subject.
I think we could probably do a whole episode just on what AI means to the enterprise and to people, because it's such a fast changing subject and it has such far ranging implications to everybody. I'm very, very conscious of time, but there's an interesting conversation on the Verge podcast a couple of weeks ago. I'll see if I can dig it up. But apparently the Dallas Federal Reserve, God knows why, had done some sort of study around the impact of AI to GDP within whatever region the Dallas Federal Reserve is looking after. And they basically had three outputs. One was basically, oh my God, everyone's going to die. Oh my God, everyone's going to be very happy and and have utopia. And the other one was that basically nothing happens. So I don't know. I'll dig that link out somewhere and I'll stick it into the show notes. But people keep saying the bubble's going to burst, and yet I see no real evidence from any of the big organizations that they seem to be
it's confusing.
aware of that. So I don't know. Well, it's I think that's all I can say.
Yeah.
The only thing that supports the bubble is the NVIDIA, the circle of financing, NVIDIA, Oracle.
It's all the funny money that's just moving around in a big circle going from one company to another company.
But the demand is here. Like it's every day. Like I'm very cynical about AI sometimes. And again, these news about it's logical.
You look at what we're doing, right? And it's an order of magnitude beyond what I ever would have been able to achieve. So I think, there are people like us that are keep giving fuel to it, right? Because we see what we can do.
Yeah.
And at some point, organizations will catch up sufficiently to be able to do it in their organizations in a safe and meaningful way. So while that cycle's still going on, I can't see it slowing down, right?
No. And we can sit here and point fingers, but I think with the Claude Code release, whenever it was a few months ago or last month, whenever, that seems to have opened a lot of people's eyes as well to what that can be done. Because I think there was always a little bit of reticence around actually what can you do vibe code, and if you're not a developer. And me and David, at least I think Cyrus, you're looking at this as well, have basically developed websites over the course of a weekend or a few days that are now live in production with, in my instance at least, no coding, and that included a migration from WordPress, including all the content and all the images, all the likes, all the subscribers, everything into the new platform. Didn't write a single line of code.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Awesome.
So on that depressing note,
no, I like it.
It just leaves me, I think, and us to say thank you very much for joining us and listening or watching, depending on your platform. And I really must put some sort of workflow in place to do this closer to the beginning of the pod. But if you have enjoyed this, please like, follow, subscribe, click the notification bell, whatever it is on the format of your choice. And just to reiterate for those that still got to the end, although you should know this if you've actually got to the end, we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the major podcast platforms, or YouTube if you prefer seeing us in action, so to speak. Which just leaves me to say thank you very much, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. David, Cyrus?
Thank you very much.